What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of AKP Sports Talk. As always, I'm Ari, here with Korea, back with another week of football, Thursday night football tonight. I believe I saw on Twitter that today starts a stretch of like 2 months straight where there's essentially football every single day with, I think it's what, Maction starting next week and some of those other midweek football games. So we'll have a lot more football coming up pretty much every day. We'll start off with a quick L recap from Monday. Unfortunately, obviously, like we said, we were both on the Seahawks, who did their best with what they had. With all they were decimated on their defensive line, and I felt like once DK Metcalf fumbled the ball and the Seahawks fell behind two scores, that almost felt like the game to an extent. They finally got a stop later before the Tyler Lockett OPI call was brutal, where they had the ball at like the 40 of the Detroit. I think at that point after the pass to JSN, um, I'm not too worried about the loss for the Seahawks. Being a fan, obviously, Korea, what were your takeaways from the game?
Yeah, you mentioned it, obviously, one of those games where, it could have gone either way, obviously, first, Seattle, obviously, their defense just couldn't stop the run at all. And obviously, that's pretty much what we were trying to avoid, obviously, as we mentioned on Monday, just trying to make Jared. But at the same time, I mean, Jared Goff didn't have an incompletion. So at the same time, it's, the whole Lions offense was pretty much cooking. I mean, Jared Goff was finding everyone, obviously, did not have an incompletion. So obviously, a perfect passer rating, just. Obviously, he was pretty dialed, obviously, throughout the secondary. And then just in terms of the battle of the trenches, obviously, you saw, Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, they burst out for maybe like 10, 8-yard runs. And obviously, we saw that big run when Montgomery hit Witherspoon, the middle open, obviously, for an open tackle. He just trucked him and obviously just ran upfield for about another gain of like 40. Obviously, part of me, obviously, as a man who had the Seahawks money line, hated to see that. But as someone who had David Montgomery in fantasy that week, what wasn't the worst to see. So, but obviously at the same time, just tough on the Seahawks. But at the same time, you mentioned questionable calls. Whether it was the 2-point conversion that was but wasn't, but then obviously there was a foul on that play. But when you look at the review, you see maybe DK's knee gets part of that blue turf in the end zone. So. And then obviously the no PI on Carlton Davis, even though it was late, obviously the no PI, which thought it was a PI. And so, but at the same time, you look at how, that game was, and, the Lions got out to a big lead with just their offense, and their offense just could not get off the field. Seahawks defense, you mentioned they were down 4 pass rushers. That pretty much was the difference. The Seahawks were getting such limited pressure. Obviously you look at pretty much how it was, and how the Lions set up their offensive line with even without Ragno, they were just double teaming pretty much, not trying to get any pressure, on Jared Goff. And it was just, it was all lines all day in terms of their offense. So, but at the same time, you mentioned, I'm not really too disappointed. This is the first time the Lions have beat the Seahawks since, the Obama administration. So, congratulations to them. They can, have their parade and, have their Super Bowl, and obviously, talk about how this is their biggest win. Obviously it's week 3. So obviously, tough loss there, but, we'll be bouncing back with the Seahawks. I obviously will have them in a play later today, obviously. But definitely a tough loss for the Seahawks, you mentioned. But at the same time, it's not, the end of the world. Obviously, this was, the first loss against, I'd say, an inferior opponent for this for the Seahawks in terms of, just they didn't really match up well with all the injuries you mentioned, and then obviously losing Julian Love in the game as well was a big loss, losing not only, your front 4, but then pretty much, your guy in the secondary, one of your captains. That's already another huge loss. And, we saw Jamison Williams have that big 70-yard run. Maybe that could have been, just with, the absence of Julian Love, maybe a big issue there. So, hopefully to get the Seahawks healthy into this week will definitely be a big help, for that defense. But tough loss, against one of the best offenses in the league, even though they're missing their center. So, not the biggest L considering, it's early in the season. So, tough one there. But obviously, we're going to move on. Obviously, we have Thursday Night Football tonight. Obviously, big games here. First, I'm going to explain the actual NFL game later. First, I'm going to go into the college football realm here. I've been digging into the college football realm on Thursday. So far, 2-0 back-to-back Thursdays with the plays here. Going to make it 3-0. I'm taking Troy first half plus 7.5 here, minus 125 here. And I'm just backing Troy at home, the Trojans. You look at this Trojan offense, right? It's bad. It's bad. I know it's bad. I know it's. I've seen Troy. They have a horrible offense, right? We're just backing their defense here. We're backing their defense. They have a good secondary, right? And that's what Texas State leans on. They love to throw the ball with McLeod, and McLeod is a great. He's a great quarterback. We've seen him make great throws. They obviously had that almost upset win, at home against Arizona State. That would have been a great game. Well, that was a great game. Nonetheless, would have been a great win for them at home, but just couldn't get the win there. I like Texas State in the full game here, but I think Troy's going to give them a little trouble in that first half, with just how good their secondary is. Obviously, I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. You can blame the whole, prime-time, under, just outside thing for college. It does affect it as well, weather as well. But I'm just more taking Troy, to keep this game interesting in the first half, because I know that Texas State's going to fix things in, the second half and probably run away with things. That's pretty much a big trend, that I've seen in college football right now. Teams that, that are, slightly, 13 to 20-point underdogs. They like to keep things close in the first half and make it interesting. But then the favorite usually runs away with it in the second half after some adjustments. I'm more backing that here again. I'm backing Troy at home with their secondary top 50 defense in terms of the pass, at home. So I'm backing that defense here. I'm backing Troy first half here, Troy first half plus 7.5 here, minus 125 here. I've seen that number as high as 130, and it's starting to go down a little bit. So, you're getting it still at pretty good value. So I'm getting Troy first half here, plus 7.5, backing that defense throughout the first half at home against Texas State. Obviously, and also short week for both teams. I'm just backing Troy here. We talk about how, Troy's defense, and I like backing defenses at home. One of my favorite systems, just backing the defense, better defense at home, whatever the system is. And, even though Troy's offense, it's just not, they're not really top 100 or near top 100 in anything. They don't get a lot of points, but they don't allow a lot of points, right? And that's what I'm more backing here. And Texas State's defense, we saw what happened last week. Did that comeback from Sam Houston State, I want to say. Yeah, Sam Houston State. That was an unbelievable comeback. I almost put Texas State minus whatever to bet. And all of a sudden I see Sam Houston State up driving down the field 39-37, with the chance to win the game. And I'm thinking, come on, you can't be back in that you can't be back in that defense. So even though Troy's offense is really bad, I'm more back in Troy's defense, to keep things interesting within the first half. So Troy first half plus 7.5 here, minus 125. And then in the NFL game tonight, I'm doing a 2-leg teaser here. I teased the Buccaneers up from, when I saw them yesterday, they were plus 1.5. So now they're 2.5. So I teased them up to 7.5 yesterday, but now even better value. I teased them up to plus 8.5. And then we're also teasing the Seahawks down from minus 6.5, pretty much to a pick 'em or minus half. That's minus 120 on DraftKings right now. Look, I think the Bucs do win this game, but I think it's going to be a really close game, really interesting game. But I don't really know, where that spread is going to land. Obviously, the fact that it overnight grew a point, is really interesting to me. Obviously, it was Falcons minus 1.5 all week. And, I was leaning toward the Bucs, and I just said, I'll just put them in the teaser. But obviously now the line is growing. So the more that line grows, the more I do like the Bucs tonight. But I'm just backing the Bucs here. Obviously, the better defense on the road here. We just saw that Buccaneers defense, even though, yes, it was a depleted Eagles team. The Eagles pretty much could not really get the run established. And that's pretty much with the presence of Vita Vea. He really is their big their big guy up front to pretty much stop the run. We've seen this before with the Buccaneers defense, pretty much just stopping the run and forcing the throw. And, if they can really stop, this Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier kind of duo that's happening. Who knows who really, obviously, you would assume Bijan, but the way we've seen Algier, more into the system, maybe it can be, more of a 1 and then 1A type situation, in terms of that duo. But I think if the Bucs really stop the Falcons on the ground, forcing Kirk Cousins to throw, I think, I don't know how Kirk Cousins does in the air tonight. I've seen his under, I think I'm doing a little Ryan reading. I think his under 1.5 passing touchdowns, I think is minus 130 or so. Vegas thinks, Falcons struggle to get some offense tonight. And obviously it's going to be a hard matchup for Baker Mayfield, in that offense as well. But the fact that the Falcons, they do run the highest, I think, percentage of zone defense, and Baker obviously better against zone defense against versus man coverage. So you take those splits into account. I think even though the run game has not been going the way that they've planned, but now that they have Bucky Irving, obviously the kid from Oregon that they got in the draft this year, I think we're going to see a lot more of him. Potentially being more of a leading back here. But I'm just more backing the Buccaneers here on the road. A short week, obviously divisional game. Obviously it's going to be close, and just I love backing a road divisional dog in this spot here. With that line growing the opposite way, I don't really like the Falcons here in this spot with in terms of their offense matching up against the Buccaneers defense. So I'm just teasing the Buccaneers from 2.5 all the way up to plus 8.5. I think they definitely make this game close. I think they make this game within a touchdown. I even think they may even win this game outright tonight as well. But I may do a little sprinkle of that. So I like the Bucs. Just playing it safe here with the teaser of teasing them from plus 2.5 all the way up to plus 8.5. And then we got to wait till Sunday, obviously, for part 2. Back in the Seahawks here at home against the Giants. Not really with that how the spread is looking. All the signs are pointing toward the Giants as to make this thing game interesting. I'm just going to take the Seahawks Seahawks to just win the game here at -0.5 or a PK, whatever you want to call it. I mean, obviously it's more just backing the Seahawks, and I know it's you're a homer. No, I'm just not. I'm not a homer. I mean, have you seen the Giants offense? Sorry.
And they're probably going to be without Neighbors too. So
I'm about to say, yeah, and without their star in Neighbors, who's going to be out with due to concussion protocol. That's already a big loss for them. Obviously, that was the way the pass game was getting things going alongside was Wandale Robinson. Those two were kind of the main guys, for that offense for the Giants. We saw that against the Cowboys in that Thursday night football game. It was more of the steady, air game with, Rondale Robinson in the short game and then Malik Neighbors downfield. But if they're going to be without Neighbors, obviously it's going to be a lot more target on Wandale, and obviously you're going to have guys step up. But I don't know how the Giants do in this road spot here. Obviously it's a road environment, and we know we've seen how the Seahawks defense does against, these quarterbacks. Obviously Bo Nix at home, Skylar Thompson at home. And now obviously it's Daniel Jones is not, as bad as those two, but I mean, Daniel Jones is still pretty bad. So, and, even if they're going to be without their main guy in terms of their offensive weapon, I just like the Seahawks to get the win here. Even the bigger question is just, the health of the Seahawks in terms of their defense, and obviously off of a short week as well, coming from that Monday night game. So they don't get the full, week to have off and get ready for this game. So, but even though I still like the Seahawks just to win this game outright at home, obviously just backing them, just to get the win here, not really liking that spread there. So that's why I'm just teasing it down from 6.5 to pretty much a pick 'em. Don't really have to worry about any spread, just hoping the Seahawks pretty much just win this game outright, not having to worry about, a spread or anything. I've seen a lot of system going toward the Giants as road dogs, but I'm just going to back the Seahawks here to get this one out here at home. Obviously, it's a short week, but obviously, they're coming off I'd say an emotional loss, definitely. On the road, we saw DK frustrated on the sideline. The offense, the offense was starting to get things going a lot more in the second half, but it was just a little bit too much of a mountain to climb, in terms of how the offense, was in terms of the Lions offense. And, you rank the Lions and the Giants offense, and I mean, all right, it's like comparing two different things here. I mean, the Giants offense and the Lions offense, yeah. So I'm just taking the Seahawks here just to pretty much win outright, to taking a -0.5 points. So those are my 2-ish plays for tonight in terms of football. Taking Troy in the first half here to cover the plus 7.5 at -125. And then we're doing the teasing the Bucs up from 2.5 to plus 8.5. I also like the Bucs if they do go up to plus 3. I do like that as a solo play. I also like the Bucs straight up as a money line as well. And then I'm teasing the Seahawks down from -6.5 down to pretty much a pick 'em or -0.5, whatever you want to call it. Those are my 2 plays for tonight going on to Sunday as well. Ari, I know you got something in that game between Troy and Texas State as well. What do you like in that game?
Yeah, I'm also on the Bucs tonight. I think they win, but I'll start off with the first play. You talked about Troy's defense and how their secondary's been pretty good, and for the first quarter, there's a stat, and across their 5 games, they've given up a total of 16 points in the first quarter in their 5 games, and that includes shutting out Iowa, who obviously, when you think of Iowa, you don't think of offense, but this year Iowa's offense has been pretty good, and Iowa still scored, I think it was 38 points. So they scored 38 points in the last three quarters. For the first quarter, they shut them out. So Troy's been good at starting off strong early in games, and that's why I'm going to this first quarter. It's a partially that, also the narrative play, because you talked about Texas State last week against Sam Houston State, and Texas State scored 22 points in the first quarter in that game. So you look at that and you think that this would be easily, going over. But then going up against Troy's defense, I think that they can limit them. So I think just an early field goal, like just something like that, could make this play. That's mostly what I'm banking on when I play. This type of first quarter under 13 and a half. Just obviously you can't have two touchdowns. So you just need a couple stops or a long drive that results in a field goal, something like that. I think Troy, just with their success in the first quarter of this year, again, 16 total points in the 5 games they've played in the first quarter, including, I think, 2 shutouts. So I'm mostly just making on that a combination of the narrative of Texas State not doing what they did again last week in the first quarter, as well as Troy's defense keeping up what it's been doing. And it's been, against not all terrible competition. Like I said, Iowa, they shut them out. So we're kind of on the same length here, sort of, with the banking on Troy's defense. I'm just sticking with the first quarter under and just hoping for a couple stops to open up the game. And then Troy's defense is kind of faded kind of in the second half of games. And so that's partially why I'm just going the first quarter. And then I looked at the first half under 20 and a half, which I kind of like as well. But even the second quarter, our defense has been a little bit spotty at times. So I'm mostly just backing them in the first quarter here with this first quarter under 13 and a half in Texas State and Troy. And then going to the NFL, obviously you talked about the Bucs, and I like your teaser as well. I also think they win, so obviously I think that hits too. Just looking at the two teams, the Falcons have not gotten home at all in their pass rush this year. And when you give Baker enough time in the pocket, he's going to pick you apart with, Evans, Godwin. Even the past 2 weeks, we've seen K. Dotton get more involved as well in the offense. So, they have a really good safety duo with, I think, Bates and Simmons. But, with Evans and Godwin, you can just get picked apart in like the short to intermediate passing game, which we've seen Baker do a lot, including last week against the Eagles. And on the other hand, you have the Falcons' offensive line that's banged up, and then you have a Bucs defense that likes to blitz. And when Cousins gets under pressure, he's not as good. When Cousins is, when Cousins has time in the pocket, he can be, very good. But when he gets pressure early, and that's what we saw the Bucs do in their win against the Lions, just pressure Goff, get pressure. That's what the Seahawks couldn't do against Goff, obviously. And the Bucs, when they face a quarterback that's not mobile, they like to blitz a lot. And so I think we're going to see them do that a lot under Todd Bowles tonight. Is blitz heavy early. Statistically, the Bucs' run defense isn't good this year. They're like bottom, I think, 5, but a lot of that is against both Jaden Daniels, who ran for like almost 100 yards in week 1, and then Bo Nix ran for like 50 yards in that game. So a lot of it has been against quarterbacks who have been rushing, and obviously Cousins won't be rushing. Maybe like for like 2 yards a little bit. Nothing for Bo Nix or Jaden Daniels like. So I think we're going to see a heavy blitz. I think it's going to be close. I don't think I see it being a blowout, but I just like the Bucs for those 2 reasons. I think we're going to see the Bucs blitz a lot on Kirk Cousins and maybe force him to throw a pick or just a couple of bad passes. And then on the other hand, the Falcons haven't been able to get home on the pass rush, and when Baker has time in the pocket, and he's shown the ability to run a little bit when he needs to as well this year when he's under pressure. So for those 2 reasons, I like the Bucs just to win outright, go into Atlanta and win this game. Those are my 2 plays. Texas State, Troy, first quarter under, backing Troy's defense mostly on the 2 sides, and then the Bucs to walk into Atlanta with the win tonight.
Yeah, I definitely see your play with the Texas State Troy first quarter under there. I definitely like it. You mentioned Troy's defense, kind of starts to slip. That's why I like the first half, wanted nothing to do with the full game. As I said, I leaned Texas State in the full game because Troy's defense, obviously, really falters in that second half. But in the first half, and especially first quarter, as you mentioned, one of the better teams defensively. You mentioned not even letting Iowa score a point. And obviously, we always clown Iowa for their bad offense, but they're 6th in rushing offensively this year in terms of how Caleb Johnson, how that run game gets going. So, we can't really say too much about Iowa in terms of the run game, and the fact that Troy was able to hold that on the road obviously speaks volumes to their defense. So, I like your just first quarter under backing, Troy's defense at home, and obviously Troy's offense not the strongest as well. So, you don't have to worry. But the only scary thing is Texas State's defense. Not the strongest at all if they're not getting any pressure on the quarterback, because they do lead. I think they average about 4 sacks a game, which is tied for first in the country. So they do like to get pressure on the quarterback, but at the same time, they don't have the strongest secondary, or they don't really defend the run that well. So I do like that first quarter under 13.5 for you. And obviously, we're both aligned with the Bucks here. I already talked about, Baker and his stats against zone coverage versus man. And obviously, Falcons run a lot of zone, and he does have better completion percentage, against zone coverage against man. So obviously, like Baker in that offense. And you mentioned all the Falcons' offensive line injuries as well. For them, not a good matchup against the Bucks, who will probably bring heavy pressure up the front. Obviously, forcing Kirk Cousins to be on the run. And as you mentioned, they did struggle against mobile quarterbacks. You mentioned Bo Nix, Jaden Daniels, guys who are dual threat, but Kirk Cousins, he's not really a dual threat guy. He'll occasionally run, but he'll definitely be limited. Which is how much pressure will be in his face. So I do like the Buccaneers on the money line as well, lining up with Troy and Texas State under in the first quarter, 13.5. Those are Ari's 2 plays and mine. Troy backing them on the first half spread minus. Oh, excuse me. I keep saying minus. I don't know why. Troy first half plus 7.5 here, minus 125. And then my teaser of the weekend with the Buccaneers, teasing them up from 2.5 all the way up to 8.5. And then the Seahawks on Sunday, teasing them down from 6.5 to pretty much a pick 'em. You can find all of these plays, of course, on our Twitter below, AKP Sports Talk. We'll have this video and, of course, our full card posted momentarily for tonight's Thursday night football matchups. Obviously, that's going to do it for this episode. Of course, that's Ari. I'm Korea. We'll be back tomorrow, of course, to highlight the entire weekend. And, of course, Ari mentioned it. We will have the shriek of football games starting soon. Obviously, very, very exciting, as we get closer to the sports equinox. Obviously, on Monday, October 28th, the big day, we got NBA, we got NFL, we got NHL, we got MLB. We have every sport. We may do a sports equinox parlay on that Monday. Who knows?
I was going to say that.
Yeah, exactly. The sports equinox parlay on the October 28th. So check into that. And obviously, as already mentioned, we got some action potentially coming up. I think it's CUSA this coming week with, I think, FIU at Pitbull Stadium. Oh boy, that's the game Tuesday night. Are you excited for that one? Oh, I am. But obviously, that's coming up next week. But obviously, tomorrow we'll have our full weekend of NFL and college football Saturday and Sunday. And maybe even some MLB, obviously, with the NLDS starting on Saturday. Who knows? But that's going to do it for this episode of AKP Sports Talk. That's Ari. I'm Korea. We'll see you guys tomorrow.